Good afternoon and welcome to the program. You're watching ASEAN Business Report. Today is Friday, the 18th of November 2011, and you're with us, Amatakon Plodi.
And I'm Pasurang Desha Purangsi. Well, Kunatakon Prime Minister Yingluck Shinawatra has recently posted on her Facebook account, the official one, clarifying the press. Well, the Indonesian press and also the CNBC that the international global stage understands the Thai floods, which is a major disaster that we're facing. And of course, a program, the rehabilitation program, is on its way.
Yeah, and we'd also like to comment that she's not using her Twitter account anymore from the previous news. Also, about the committee to look after the rehabilitation, the strategic reconstruction and new development committee is headed by Dr. Virapong Ramangkul, who our nation editor and our ASEAN newsroom editor, Kuntanong Kantong, had interviewed yesterday, and we'll be hearing more of that footage later in the show.
Definitely. Well, for the latest update on the ASEAN Summit, Indonesia has warned deploying U.S. Marines in Australia could cause regional tensions, highlighting the balancing act nations face as Washington and Beijing jostle for influence in Asia. China's regional neighbors welcomed the United States' diplomatic campaign to assert itself as a Pacific power and create a counterbalance to the Asian superpowers' growing might, but an ill effort to alienate Beijing. President Barack Obama announced in Canberra on Wednesday that the U.S. would deploy up to 2,500 Marines in the northern city of Darwin, rankling China, which termed it not quite appropriate. Indonesia, the most populous Muslim nation, has fast emerged as a cornerstone ally for Obama's administration, but nevertheless echoed the Chinese concerns about a U.S. military buildup. But I would hate to see if such developments were to provoke a reaction and counter-reaction precisely to create that vicious cycle of tensions and mistrust or distrust. Well, Foreign Minister Marty Nederlegua said at the ASEAN Summit on the Indonesian of Bali, Indonesia's frank comments came against the backdrop of a looming confrontation over a maritime dispute between the U.S. and China, who will meet at Saturday's East Asia Summit, which follows the Bali talks. Well, Singapore Foreign Minister K. Shanmugam said Wednesday that the ASEAN nations do not want to get caught between the competing interests of major powers. And Malaysian Prime Minister Najib Razak said his country, which also has claims over the disputed South China Sea, as well as strong economic ties with Beijing, did not back any development that would undermine regional security. However, the Philippines, another South China Sea claimant, which has angered Beijing with a push for a joint stand on the strategic issue at the ASEAN Summit, welcomed a more robust U.S. presence in the region. Jason Clare, Australian Minister for Defence Materials, said Australia has told its neighbours that about the U.S. deployment on Indonesia's southern doorstep in recent days, and that it would be discussed at Saturday's summit.
The past few days, we've seen an increased United States presence to re-establish their allied ties in the region, and also the Philippines will press for a resolution of territorial disputes in the South China Sea once Southeast Asian leaders meet today with Chinese Premier Wen Jiabao, who has sought to keep the issue out of regional forums. This is not an issue that can be isolated between China and the Philippines. Ricky Caradang, a spokesman for President Benigno Aquino, told reporters yesterday. This is an issue that involves many countries in the region, and the more we're able to discuss this in an atmosphere of candor brings us closer to ultimately finding some kind of solution. The Philippines has called on the 10-member Association of Southeast Asian Nations to facilitate talks with China over disputed areas of the South China Sea that contain oil and gas resources. The bloc's leader will also meet later today with U.S. President Barack Obama, whose administration has pledged to bolster the naval defenses of the Philippines, a treaty ally. The American military and diplomatic backing has emboldened the Philippines to press its territorial claims against China, Asia's biggest economy and military spender. The U.S. aims to balance China in the region to ensure there isn't kind of a big thumb on the scale, Secretary of State Hillary Clinton said in Manila 2 days ago. ASEAN is not an appropriate forum to discuss the South China Sea dispute, Chinese Foreign Ministry spokesman Liu Weimin told reporters in Beijing yesterday. China prefers one-on-one talks to resolve contested areas instead of a multilateral approach, he said.
An agreement on boundaries would determine access to oil reserves in the South China Sea that may total as much as 213 billion barrels, according to Chinese studies cited in 2008 by the U.S. Energy Information Agency. The Philippines and Vietnam, which have awarded exploration contracts in disputed areas to ExxonMobil Corporation, Talisman Energy Incorporation, and Forum Energy, reject China's map of the sea as a basis for joint development. The Philippines proposed in May dividing up land features and setting maritime boundaries according to the UN Law of the Sea, a move that would cost China rights to a large swath of the waters now included in its 9-dash map that extends hundreds of miles south from Hainan Island into the equatorial waters off the coast of Borneo. The 9-dash line is the core of the problem, Philippines Foreign Minister Adele Dole Rosario said on November 15th. China has used patrol boats to disrupt survey activities in disputed waters, chasing away a ship working for the UK-based Forum Energy off the Philippines in March and cutting cables of a survey ship doing work for Vietnam in May. ASEAN and China agreed in July on non-binding guidelines for operating in the seas, designed as the first step toward a bidding code of conduct. The South China Sea contains two sets of contested island groups, the Spratlys and Paracels. China fully controls the Paracels after ousting fellow claimant Vietnam for the 30 islets and reefs in the 1974 battle that killed 71 soldiers. The Philippines, Vietnam, China, Malaysia, and Taiwan have troops further to the south on the Spratlys. Brunei, another ASEAN member, also has a claim on the islands.